So I'm going to give you some pointers for a satin stitch that is moving around a curve. So for a shape like a flower where you have something that is rounded and where you have a lot of stitches on the outside coming to a single point on the inside, there's some tricks for avoiding a very lumpy or crooked or less than flat and smooth look. And I'm just going to share with you some of those. So you can see that I've started here. And I've kind of left room in between the stitches. I do this with my first go round. So I start on the outside or inside, it doesn't really matter. But I do not attempt to get my stitches next to each other on this first pass through because I want to make sure that the direction of my stitches is good. And if you're focusing on stitching side by side, you can lose sight of the direction that you need your stitches to go. So for example, this is the middle of the hoop, or the middle of the petal right here. So I'm going to come up at this middle of the, see here's the two sides of this one petal. I'm coming up in the middle and I'm going to go straight down towards the center. And then I don't need to work always with the center. I can work a little bit further up so that there's some room for my stitching so that it doesn't get clumpy, like I said. And I'm going to come down. And again, this is really focusing on the direction that you want your stitches to go, more so than on getting the floss close together. You can get the floss close together on the next go round, but right now I'm focusing on the direction of the stitches. You could even simplify it and do just the center stitches first, coming up at the center of the petal and going down to the center of the petal. And then same thing over here. So once you have all the directional stitches filled in, then you can start filling in with the aim of filling the whole petal. Now I'm going to show you something else too. The back side of my piece does not look the same as the front. That makes it less bulky and it makes it easier to come up and down through the fabric, and it conserves floss. So when I come up, I'm going to come up in the center and put my, now I'm trying to go right next to the stitches and put my needle down next to this. I'm going to come up again on the outside so that I'm not creating a thick layer of floss on the back side. And you'll see that for some of these you can go up and down from the complete inside to the complete outside, but for other ones you kind of need to tuck your needle into or under another stitch. So I'll show you right here. I'm going to come up, and if I go and try to bring this down, well, for now it's okay, but I'll do this towards the end. If I bring my stitch down completely, eventually it's going to get clumpy. So I'm going to put my needle in to here and then tuck it in. And then when I come up, and go down, looks like there's something from the back side. I'm going to tuck my needle underneath the stitch. So now I'm finishing up this flower, and you can see that it's quite smooth, the edges are nice and neat, and it's not bunchy. So I'm going to just show you how I go in towards the end. I find any place where there's a little bit of a gap. I come up, and then I could go down right straight here, but sometimes that'll look a little funny, so I'll take my needle and I'll run it in between the stitches, and I'll come down to really close to the center, and I'll just tuck it in there, and that winds up giving it, it fits better sometimes. And I find it's easier to be, you want your outer edge your most precise edge, because the inside you can fill with French knots or whatever you want, but the outer edge you want it to be nice and precise. And I find it easier to go down into the right spot than I do to come up into the right spot. So you might want to play with that, because that might be different for you. Right there, I guess I'm doing fine. But sometimes if I want to try to get the needle exactly right, I need to come down into the spot. So like if I want to make sure I'm right next to the stitch without going above or below it. I don't know if that makes sense. Come up, again, I could go right down here, which I think in this case will be just fine. And I'm just filling in anywhere that it's not completed yet. Trying to stick with the correct direction of the stitches. And on this one I want to come up from the outside because I want to tuck my needle in. See, I'm going to run my needle in between the stitches to figure out where I want to hide that. And I think I'll do that again right here to fill in this tiny gap. So it is looking pretty close to finished. I think maybe this one I'll come up from the inside. Slide my needle in between the stitches and tuck it in. Yeah, I guess over here it needs another little bit. So another way to get your stitches really, really neat is to stitch a border, and that makes it much easier to have a really clean edge. However, that can be a little time consuming, so it might not always be something that you want to do. Plus, it's entirely possible that if you're just careful, you can create a really crisp border just without it. So I think that's good.